Hello, and welcome to this presentation by Sunday Beatrice on cloud security infrastructure. My name is Sunday Beatrice, and I am a graduate of Ahmadu Bello University, but also a graduate of Northeastern University in Massachusetts, United States. I hold multiple certifications in information security, governance, and compliance, including the Certified Information System Auditor, a Certified Information Security Manager, a Certified Information System Security Professional, a Certified Cloud Security Professional, and a Certified Governance Risk and Compliance Professional. And I hold over a decade of experience in cybersecurity, working with companies like Deloitte, EY, Freddie Mac, IMF, to name a few. I'm also an author of a book called Breaking into Cybersecurity. I am a team player, a lifelong learner, and a passionate advocate for information security best practices. I today hold the position of the president of Zumunta Association, a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping our communities both in the United States and in Nigeria. Let's get to the point. In an era where digital transformation is omnipresent, securing data and applications in the cloud has become paramount. Cloud security infrastructure serves as the fortress, ensuring confidentiality, integrity, and availability of your digital assets. Why does cloud security matter? The migration to cloud environments bring unparalleled opportunities, but also introduces new challenges in terms of cybersecurity. An organization n- need to harness the power of a cloud for innovation and efficiency. A robust security infrastructure is essential to mitigate risk and protect against evolving cyber threats. If you understand what cloud really is, even though it's called cloud, it's essentially leaning or loaning access and use of someone else's computer in their data centers, but of course, accessed through the internet. In this presentation, the key takeaways is for you to gain insight into the fundamental pillars of cloud security, explore key tools and practices for building a robust security infrastructure, learn strategies to safeguard your organization's digital assets in a dynamic cloud environment. This is how this course is structured. We're going to look at identity and access management. We want to look at We're going to look at centralized control over user access, defining roles and permissions, managing user identity securely. Then we're also going to talk about encryption, protecting your data, safeguarding data during transmission and storage, implementing encryption in transit and at rest, ensuring the privacy and security of sensitive information. Then we'll also look at network security, fortifying communication channels. Then we'll look at data loss prevention, guarding against breaches. Then we'll look at security information and event management, CM. Then finally, we'll look at multi-factor authentication, MFA, strengthening access controls. Oh, we still need to look at application security, building resilient cloud applications, then compliance and governance, navigating regulatory landscapes. Let's get started with identity and access management. In identity and access management, this is a stage where you need to make sure that you centralize control over access to your cloud instances. The general overview for you in the identity and access management in the cloud is to make sure that you have a gatekeeper and that you're able to control access to resources and to ensure that the right individuals have the right permissions. Some of the key components of these slides includes having an understanding of user identities. You want to be able to manage and authenticate user identities. You want to be able to ensure that users are granted unique credentials to access cloud resources. Not just everyone should have access to your cloud resource without any form of control. Then within the fact that you have identities assigned to individual users, you want to also make sure that roles and permissions are also put in place. IAM allows the definition of roles and specific permissions across the enterprise. You also want to be sure that granting access is also based on job roles and responsibilities. That is a key component of providing and managing IAM within a cloud environment. Even though you're also having that cloud environment and all your user identities, roles, and permissions are in place, you also want to make sure that you centralize your controls and provide a centralized control panel for managing such access and to offer a single point of control over users and permissions in the list instance. The benefits of IAM. IAM allows you to enhance your security, provide for efficient management, and to also create what we call audit trail. In every cloud environment, these are some of the key requirements and some of the fundamental requirements that must be put in place to ensure that at the very least your cloud instances are in top shape. You want to be able to ensure only authorized users access resources and reduce the risk of unauthorized access. You want to make sure that you have efficient management in place to streamline user onboarding and offboarding. At least you know that there's one place where you need to go to, or one person assigned, or one system that allows you to be able to get people onto the system and have access so that they can have access to the cloud instance, and to also be able to remove them if they do not have need access. You also want to be able to ensure that you're able to simplify the administration of permissions using that efficient management system. Audit trail is a key component that we auditors look for when you're looking for a cloud instance creation. You want to make sure that IAM provides the logs for tracking user activities. You can go ahead to define all the activities that you want to track, time of logging, date and time, location, and all those additional metadata depending on the use case. You want to also be able to facilitate compliance audit monitoring through the use of your existing audit trail systems. Some of the best practices in IAM is to ensure that one, you have the principle of least privilege in place. That is, you assign the minimum required permissions and reduce the risk associated with excess access that is granted to users. That means you also want to make sure that there is adequate monitoring and review of users who are making use of the system, should in case they do not need access to that system anymore. Then additional details that you might want to also look at is there is a need for regular audits. Some of these regular audits conduct periodic review for user access and ensure alignment with organizational needs are fundamental in terms of all that you want to do. The next set, of course, is to ensure that you have multi-factor authentication in place for an added layer of security for all users who want to access your information system, your cloud system in this instance, and you have to implement this MFA to ensure that multiple forms of identification are available for your users to validate their access to the system. In implementing IAM, you can check through scenarios where new employees are granted access to specific resources based on their roles, demonstrating the granularity and flexibility that IAM offers. There are documentation available online if you really want to read more about this. Amazon Web Services IAM documentation, as the link provides. Next, we talk through encryption, protecting your data on the cloud. Safeguarding data during transmission and storage is fundamental to maintaining data integrity and ensuring sensitive information remains secure during transmission and storage. Some of the key components of this encryption process is one, you want to ensure that in transit, as data is being transmitted from one user to the other or from one system to the other on the cloud, and as data after having been processed is stored somewhere in the cloud, that there is some kind of encryption associated with it during rest and in transit. Implementation in the cloud. Cloud Platform offers native encryption services. So if you're looking at any cloud solution, whether it's AWS, Azure, or Google Cloud Services, you want to look at all the native encryption services that they offer by default. Users can encrypt data at various levels, including disks and databases. You also want to pay attention to privacy and security. Encryption protects privacy of data and prevents unauthorized access to sensitive systems. Some of the benefits of encryption ensures confidentiality so that only authorized parties can have access to the data. It also helps to mitigate the risk of data breaches when unauthorized access is when anyone has unauthorized access to that information that is stored in the cloud. The additional aspect of it as well is compliance. You have to meet regulatory requirements for data protection in many instances in many countries. Even if you are operating in Nigeria today, you might be working with data that might be coming from another country, say, for example, the EU, and you are expected to comply with GDPR as an example. So a crucial element in industries with strict compliance standards is that you have to maintain those compliance. Otherwise, you get dinged or you get seriously fined, so much so that it can completely negate your business objectives. The other part of it is as well is data integrity. The inability to maintain data integrity in itself, or when data is tampered with or there's unauthorized modification, can result in serious consequences, including loss of lives. So you have to ensure that the integrity of the information is also in place. And some of the key strategies for you to be able to do that on the cloud is called encryption. Some of the best practices you want to pay attention to when you're thinking about cloud-based services is to implement robust key management practices, ensure secure generation, storage, and rotation of encryption keys. You want to also ensure that there is end-to-end encryption applied to your solutions, especially when it's able to pull out data from one point to the other. So apply encryption consistently across the entire data lifecycle, enhance security from data generation, data creation to storage and transmission. Again, a repetition of the same thing that we spoke about in the previous slides, regular audits. These are all fundamentals in terms of validating the type of encryption that is in place to verify adherence to encryption policies and standards. Use cases, you can think about the illustration of the importance of encryption in a scenario where sensitive customer data is transmitted and stored securely, highlighting the role of encryption in maintaining trust. For example, your bank will not just transmit your data between you and wherever it is that you are in the rest of the world for anyone to just see how much you have in your account and how much withdrawal you're making, both for security reasons and for the fact that anyone can tamper with that information. It could be you, it could be anyone changing the figures. So those are some of the examples of encryption and its usefulness to cloud-based services. Again, you'll be aware that most of the cloud-based services, banks and all that sensitive services, healthcare, utilize cloud services, so they have to maintain some of those encryption at best. If you want to look at additional resources regarding encryption, for an example of Microsoft Azure, you can go to the link on the slide. Network security, fortifying communications channels. To ensure secure communication in the cloud, you want to make sure that your network security is in top notch. You also want to be able to ensure that it is there so that it can protect the flow of data between the cloud infrastructure and other solutions. What are the key components that you look at when you're talking about cloud security, cloud network security? You want to look at firewalls. Firewalls helps to control incoming and outgoing traffic. It also helps to establish barriers to unauthorized access. You can also utilize virtual private networks so it's not open to the public just in case anyone is able to sniff into the data associated with your systems. You need to think about creating secure connections over the internet, so much so that information is only shared between the trusted parties involved. We mentioned encryption of data during transmission, enhancing privacy. You also want to make sure that you have intrusion detection systems in some instances, including intrusion prevention systems, as IDS and IPSS. You also want to make sure that those are in place so that it can help you to monitor your systems, your network and your system activities, and to detect and respond to suspicious behavior or potential threats. Right. So the benefit of network security is that it allows you to prevent unauthorized access. This firewall acts as a barrier, allowing only authorized traffic. It helps to reduce the risk of unauthorized intrusion. Then at the same time, it also helps you to secure data in transit. VPNs encrypt data during transmission, protects sensitive information from interception, and it also allows you to be able to perform early threat detection. Just in case you begin to detect anomalies associated with the use of your cloud instance, you can also it can help you to put prevention mechanisms in place. Intrusion detection systems identify and respond to potential threats. It also helps to enhance real-time threat detection capabilities. So you want to pay attention to that as some of the key components required when you're thinking about your infrastructure on the cloud. Some of the best practices associated with this is to ensure regular security audits, conduct frequent audits for network configuration as well, identify and address vulnerabilities. So if you've noticed so far, there is a constant repetition of audit, 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 audit. So audit is a recurring decimal when you're thinking about cloud implementation. Then, of course, you have to also think about segmentation, implement network segmentation, and limit the impact of a potential breach by isolating segments in your cloud instance. There's also patch management. Keep network devices and systems up to date. If you're dealing with any cloud-based systems, you want to make sure that your patches are up to date and you are keeping an eye on the vulnerability database to identify vulnerabilities as they become known. In some instances, vulnerabilities are made known, but there are no patches available. You want to be able to figure out how you can mitigate those threats that might be there. Then you also want to apply patches promptly to address those known vulnerabilities so long as they become available. If you're thinking about use cases, you can explore a use case where a company secures its cloud communication channel through firewalls and VPNs, showcasing how these components work together to establish a secure network environment, because those are fundamentals for you to make sure that your network is safe and secure from people who are not authorized to have access to that. The Google Cloud Network Security link that is on this slide can provide you with additional insight if needed. Data loss prevention, guarding against breaches. If you're thinking about safeguarding sensitive data in the cloud, you want to think about implementing data loss prevention systems that allows and monitors, and prevents unauthorized access to sensitive data, ensuring confidentiality and compliance. Some of the key components of the data loss prevention systems is to one, to understand that this is what it does. It allows you to get notification of any kind of breach or identification of any of such breaches. It also allows you to be able to manage access control and to enforce policy as a key component. What does it do? What does it do in terms of breach identification? DLP tools, identification and classification of sensitive data, is one of the key areas where data loss prevention can come into play. Monitor data to prevent unauthorized access and leakage. That is another aspect of DLP and what it can do for you. Restrict access to sensitive information and implement granular access controls on user roles levels. I've worked in instances where they use the data loss prevention, and it's specifically a semantic-based system where any kind of sequence of numbers that has similarities, and of course it does a background check against US-based social security numbers. Any number that looks like that, it triggers a warning, and the risk managers like myself, or the risk auditors like myself, gets a notification, and we're able to detect and figure out what's going on and what kind of data is being transmitted. So policy enforcement, it allows you to define and enforce data protection policies, automated responses to policy violations such as blocking and alerting. Again, as mentioned earlier, anytime this data loss prevention triggers sees any data that is consistent with a defined format in any organization, it automatically either blocks it or sends an alert to people that it has been programmed to respond to. The benefits of a data loss prevention system, it helps to prevent data breaches by identifying, blocking, and potential data breaches. It safeguards against unauthorized access and data leaks. It allows for compliance assurance. At the same time, you can generate the report from whatever it is that the data loss prevention system is generating for you. So you can also present that to ensure that data compliance and protection mechanisms are in place. It also helps in avoiding penalties and legal consequences. As mentioned earlier, You do not want to go into a business where that your total earnings for the year is penalized as a result of your inability to maintain compliance with any entity that manages search. And this is not too far away from what is also applicable in Nigeria recently. So keep an eye out for that. Then there's also the protection across endpoints. Extend the data loss prevention helps to extend protection to various endpoints, including devices, cloud applications, comprehensive coverage against entire data ecosystems. Some of the best practices for data loss prevention is to one, classify your data. So you know which data is sensitive. You also need to tailor your data loss prevention policies according to your data classifications. And when you're thinking about that, you also have to think about user training. You want to train your users. In my experience, I'm having to go out and speak to each of the persons that is sending out data that looks like a classified set of data to understand why they are sending it, to let them know that the system is monitoring what they are doing. So they want to keep an eye out for that. So there's user education, and that helps to minimize these unintentional data breaches. Then, of course, the data loss prevention systems also helps you as a key contributor to managing your incident response plan. Your incident response plans are some of the your plan in terms of what happens when a system is in when there is a breach. Your data loss prevention system can also serve as a key resource that you can utilize to be able to triangulate and find the root cause to what is going on with your system. You also want to be able to outline steps to be taken in case of data breaches. Use cases, you can think about the use and the significance of data loss prevention scenarios where sensitive customer data is identified and monitored and protected against potential unauthorized access, showcasing the proactive role of data loss prevention system in preventing data breaches. And Symantec is also mentioned here as a resource you can leverage. Security information and events management system (CM) is another tool that is also useful in terms of cloud information, cloud infrastructure, cloud security infrastructure. Real-time analysis for proactive security measures. That is what a CM can give you. If you want to have visibility to what is going on across your entire system, you need to have a CM in place. What does it do? It helps in data collection, analysis and correlation, incident response, again, like the data loss prevention systems that we have in place. The benefits of CM, of course, allows you to be able to perform early threat detection, log management, and forensic analysis. Those are some of the fundamental routes that you need to have in place to manage instances associated with, to help. Some of the best practice associated with CM is to make sure that they're integrated with security tools. You need to also make sure that continuous monitoring is in place, and for you to have regular training and drills with regards to the use of CM across the cloud interface. Use cases of CM tools, you can explore the use of CM tools in terms of the kind of role it plays in identifying and responding to security incidents, showcasing real-time analysis and correlation, which will help to contribute to proactive security measure. The link from Cisco CM here is also made available for you if you need to read more. There's also multi-factor authentication, strengthening of access controls across the cloud-based systems. Beyond passwords, you need to add layers of user authentication across board. And this is what we call multi-factor authentication because it acts as a sentinel, enhancing passwords security by requiring users to provide multiple forms of identification before accessing resources. Key components. Authentication methods are fundamental for you. It helps you to, it requires that you have two or more forms of identification before you're granted access to that system. Common methods includes passwords, biometrics, and security tokens. You can also think about enhancing access controls. It adds an extra layer of security beyond traditional passwords. And it also helps you to mitigate the risk of unauthorized access even if passwords are compromised. It also helps to verify your users, verification of users and identification of users across multiple independent factors, and provides a more robust authentication process. The benefits of MFA is that it helps to reduce the risk of unauthorized access, it enhances your security, and ensure that you are compliant with any kind of regulatory standards or industry standards as may be applicable. The use of MFA, the best practice is to implement it across all your applications. You need to extend it across board. You need to also carry out user education to make sure users know how to make use of those tools. Then you also have to think about adaptive authentication, implement adaptive MFA based on risk assessments, and adjust authentication requirements as users as needed. Use cases illustrate the significance of MFA through the case where a potential security breach is thwarted using multi layers of authentication. This is an example of how to make use of your MFA. There are Microsoft resources available for MFA documentation as needed. And we also do have application security, when, especially in the cloud. When you're thinking about building an application in the cloud, you want to think about the security architecture of those clouds application to make sure that they are resilient and they're secure application. You don't want to create an application that works but eventually can easily be breached by anyone. So you want to be able to safeguard those. The key components of having application security in the cloud is to ensure that secure coding practices are used when you're creating them from the very beginning. You want to be able to identify the vulnerabilities and address them initially during the development phase. You want to have security assessment, and in many instances have security embedded within the initial development of the application, conducting frequent security assessments and audits, identifying and mitigating potential risk in cloud applications. You want to also have vulnerability management in place to implement a robust vulnerability management program and regularly scan for addressing application vulnerabilities. The benefits of application security, it allows you to have resilience against cloud-based threats, cyber threats, and protect application against various cyber threats to ensure availability and reliability. And I'll put it this way, it allows you to be able to ensure confidentiality, integrity, and availability of your application. Data integrity, it allows you to be able to have data integrity in terms of the data that goes into the application, so much so that it can be trusted that it will continue to carry out its activities or the application as it was originally designed. You also want to think about trust and user confidence. You want to build trust among users by ensuring the security of their data and to enhance user confidence in the use of that application. Some of the best practices of application security is to ensure security in development lifecycle. As mentioned earlier, you want to also perform penetration testing when you're developing your application, even if it is based on the cloud. You also want to secure your third-party components. Everything that you're bringing in from third parties to connect to your application, you want to make sure that they have been vetted and they are approved for use for your system. When you're thinking about cloud security, you can also think about the importance of application security through a use case where a resilient cloud application successfully fends off cybersecurity attacks due to secure coding practices and proactive vulnerability management. Secure coding practices and vulnerability management is a independent and useful resources that you want to take into consideration when developing your cloud application. The Cloud Security Alliance CSA has a research on some of the best practices for application and cloud security, and the link is provided here. And finally, governance, risk, and compliance, navigating regulatory landscapes. As you work with cloud-based systems, remember that you're dealing with different entities, different organizations, different jurisdictions, different governments, and they all different industries, and they all have different requirements. Some of the key components of the governance, risk, and compliance in cloud-based security is one, it allows you to be able to adhere to industry standards. For example, the aerospace have specific requirements. The aerospace industry have specific requirements. The medical industry have their own specific requirements. You want to keep to that. So as you develop your applications, you want to be able to ensure that you have a full bird's eye view into all these platforms, all these requirements. There's also policy establishment. Policies have to be established when you're thinking about developing application in the clouds, and you also want to make sure that they are secure for use. You also are thinking about defining guidelines for data handling, access control, and more. Those are all requirements when you're building application because they help to give you the guardrails for managing what you need to do. There's also risk management. You want to be able to identify and mitigate risk associated with cloud usage and to implement strategies to manage and reduce any other potential risks. The benefit of compliance and governance is one, legal and regulatory adherence, risk reduction, policy consistency across board. You can read more of this material. You also do have best practices, regular audits and assessment, again, repeating itself for the umpteenth time. Then we're also thinking about documentation and reporting. Those are all fundamentals in terms of your cloud-based usage and cloud security tools that you need. Then you're also thinking about collaboration with legal and compliance teams. They are the ones that have better insight into what you're doing. You might be an application developer. You might not necessarily think about this, but there are specific teams that should be able to provide you support where needed. For you to be able to have an understanding of this, you can look at examples where governance and compliance through a use case of when organizations successfully navigate a regulatory audit when auditors are coming. This is what most of the time they're looking for because it can really be costly for many organizations. The AWS Cloud Compliance link here provided gives you insight. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this presentation. I am more than happy to answer any questions.